Hello, can you guys hear me? Awesome.
Yes,
Good evening, guys. How is everybody doing?
good. You?
Good, good. I'm glad to see you guys again. Um, Welcome to class 4 of Foundations of Programming. Yesterday, we started and got close to finishing JavaScript. Um, we completed, I believe, the bad calculator assignment, and then we talked about doing, I think like a day of the week or something. But before we jump into um, today's class, I want to kind of talk a little bit more about yesterday's subject, right? I feel like a large part of the class is struggling a little bit with uh, trying to understand uh, the document, right, and its methods, along with how it ties in with JavaScript, right? Um, and it's not to you guys' fault. It is the first time you guys see it, right? Um, I just want to make sure that everyone kind of understands it. I had some conversation with some of you guys after we closed off the class, and I think I was losing you guys somewhere around the query selectors and using the event listeners. And we're gonna talk about it a little bit more about the DOM. What is the DOM, right? So essentially, the DOM is what we call an interface, right? You don't really see it. And the DOM is created essentially when you link your JavaScript to your HTML document and you open it up on your browser, right? The DOM within its name has the word object, right? Essentially, it is a bunch of objects. It's actually a tree of objects. If you guys recall the imagery that I showed you guys before about the DOM, it looked like a bunch of tree branches with the root level being the document, then it's the HTML, and then from the HTML it goes into like the head, the body, and it branches off to all these different elements, whether it's head, body, the divs, paragraphs. Those are essentially, it creates different objects for every single one of those branches, right? And we can simplify it a little bit more by talking about what JavaScript allows you to do. And we can create objects in JavaScript. You guys remember from the intro to coding, or probably from your own research when it comes to JavaScript, you can create objects in JavaScript. If you guys are familiar with Python, uh, Python has a little bit more distinct, right? They have their own names. Uh, where JavaScript, it uses both names for the two things, and I'm gonna tell you which ones they are, right? If you're familiar with Python, you've probably heard of a dictionary and you've probably heard of a class. JavaScript takes both of those two and calls them objects, right? There's different types of objects that it calls it differently, but in the same way, it still uses the word object to reference them, right? In JavaScript, they're called literal objects or callable objects. The literal objects is what you're more familiar with when it comes to Python, being the dictionary, right? When it comes to the callable objects, those are very similar in Python to what your classes are, right? If you guys are familiar with Python, you probably kind of see the resemblance, right? So the DOM itself creates objects, and that's where we get these different methods like query selector and add event listener. It is a pre-built object that gets created uh, in your browser that allows you to manipulate the DOM, right? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen real quick. I tried to kind of code it out real quick. So here is an example of what a callable object is, and this is what is being represented in your DOM. This is what the document.query selector is doing, right? Here we created an object called person. This object itself takes two parameters, name and age, right? If we were referencing the document is doing something very similar to this. It's doing function document, and then the parameters it's taking is like your HTML, your body tag, your element tag, your p tags, right? It's creating the different parts that goes to that object itself. This specific object only has two different things, name and age, right? We declare what name is, we declare what age is, and then we get into the actual methods that this object has. Document has pre-built methods very similar to this. These methods are your query selector, your add event listener. Here, I made my own version. This object itself has the method called greet, right? Essentially, it's just a function, right? This function is console.log, hello, my name is, and then it tells it the name of the person, right? This is the method that you're seeing. The method for the DOM is something similar to this dot, query selector is equal to function, right? And I don't know the actual, structure of how this works. All I know is that somewhere within its function, it's able to grab the HTML parts of your document, right? That's what query selector, add event listeners are. These are methods, right? You don't have to understand how it does it in the function. Just know that essentially it's a function or a method, another word that we use, and it's built into that object itself, right? And this object that I created, we have the greet. This is essentially just the recipe, the blueprint to my object. Once you actually create your object, you actually have to instantiate it. This is what's happening whenever you open up your web browser, right? Whenever your DOM is being created, it instantiates something very similar to this. I here created a new person, right? So we did const person is equal to new person, and then I gave it a name and I gave it an age, right? If we were referencing the DOM, it would look something similar to this. Const probably DOM is equal to new DOM, right? And then the parameters that are being passed within here is probably like your own HTML document, right? And so on and so forth. And it instantiates that DOM for you. And now you have access to all these different methods within your document. All right, so let's remove line 16. I instantiated this person object, and I can use certain things that belongs to person. Right here, we do console.log person.name, and it returns me the name. And then I can use a method that I created, person.greet. And we see that it actually works, right? I can check the name of the object I created, and I can even use a method that I created from this object. We can do other methods, right? Just like there is a query selector, we have add events listener. We can do this dot we can say bark. We can make this object bark, console.log bark, right? And then down here, we just create that new method. We can do person.bark, call upon that method that we created, and he barks, right? That's what your DOM is doing. That's what document.querySelector add event listener are doing. These are pre-built functions that we're creating to its object. Once you open up your browser, it instantiates this DOM, and you have access to those methods that were created. You didn't have to create them yourself. They get created for you. Document.querySelector, add event listener, inner text, these are all pre-built methods that are instantiated the moment we are using our web page, right? All we're doing is bringing them into our JavaScript code and taking advantage of them. Does this explain a little bit of it? Is this ringing a bell to you guys about, objects of what they are? This is a callable object. The objects you guys are probably more familiar with are objects like, what you call it? What can we do? We can do const animals, and then we can open and close curly brackets, and then you can put, whatever animals you want, right? Let's not do animals. We'll stick to the person one again. We do person one is equal to John, right? Comma. Person two is equal to, I'm messing this up. Give me a second. James. Right? Get an error here because I already created a person. Let's do people. right? This is what you guys are probably used to when it comes to objects. Objects tend to have like key value pairs. There's two different types, right? These are literal objects. This is a callable object. Right? JavaScript kind of mixes them together. I don't know why they do that. Python's a little bit easier to understand because they separate the name. They call them classes or they call them dictionaries. You guys are probably used to this part right here where you create key value pairs. This is a callable object. It's another form of an object, right? And these objects hold certain uh, attributes, right? Uh, you guys can remember this, right? We used this yesterday. It's referring to the function that's within calling itself. This dot name, it's creating a variable, right? And it's assigning it the parameter that we passed in here. All right, this will make more sense once we do object-oriented programming. But this is a form of an object. This is callable. This is literal. And the callable one is very similar to what you're seeing with your DOM. It's creating that document object. And it has some built-in methods like this one on line 5 that does stuff. We're just using it. Cool. Does anyone have any questions?
I do, but if it needs to wait, I totally get that. I was playing with this earlier and I noticed that using arrow functions, it seems to handle this a little bit differently. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. I know it's a new standard, so I've been trying to learn it.
Yes. Arrow functions are used primarily for like one-liner codes, if that makes sense. You can use arrow functions. There's different ways of creating the functions.
But I noticed like when I was like doing the arrow function, for instance, it would take like this dot name and it would actually hoist it. And so it would just like assume that it was needed. That like you just have name equals name and it would just assume that this is what I was gathering, but I don't know what scope that's in, if it's global, if it was very confusing when I was trying to test it.
For your callable ones,
Correct. So if you had like function person name age and you had this dot name, if you arrow functioned, I believe you could literally use it in any scope under that. Again, I could be wrong on that. I'm still learning on that, but that seems to be what I was testing earlier. Now, if
are
this
you
is a
referring
conversation that needs to
to?
happen later because nobody knows what an arrow function is, I totally get that. So
So an arrow function, what he's saying is, it should be something like uh this dot bark. It should be something like this function.log bark. Right? Is that what you're referring to?
correct, but I don't think you need the this dot is what I'm saying. I think it's assumed within whatever that
Oh no.
function is, if it's a built-in function once you put in the arrow function or what.
Let's test it out. Person.bark is not a function. Mm, is the bark? There we go.
Okay, I'm gonna play with that and see if I can explain what I mean, or maybe I'm just mistaken on what I mean. So
Maybe we do const. Mm-mm. Yeah. Keep playing with it
okay,
and then you can get back to us.
oh well, thank you.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions? Let me see what I can do. I see. All right. So if you guys are feeling a little discouraged from your sys class, I want you guys to know that's okay. You guys are gonna be fine. Okay. Don't feel discouraged. Uh, Previously, we did not get this much time to do this assignment. Uh, Typically you guys will get 10, 15 minutes, and I gave you guys a lot of time. Uh, so most people don't ever really get that far anyways on that calculator. You guys were able to actually kind of dive into it a little bit more, and it takes some more time to kind of dissect it. Uh, typically go really quick with foundation programming, and people are always confused to the very end. But I promise you, you will get it. Uh, it takes trial and error. You're not gonna get it right off the bat, right? Read up on it. I mentioned to Gary if I didn't understand it in a way that you guys can comprehend it. It's not necessarily your fault at all, right? It might just be that you learn differently. I might not teach it in the way that you guys can understand it, right? If you guys need to find outside resources to kind of explain it in a different manner, I encourage it, right? Go to YouTube, see how if someone can explain to you with a DOM is in a different way, right? Or what query selectors are, add event listeners. It's always good to see things in different perspectives, right? Um, so, and I think that might be what it is. On top of that, I don't know how often you guys code, right? But we do this at, late at night. It's in the evening. So, uh, you guys get burnt out, right? Whether you guys notice it or not, you guys get burnt out. Last night, like, I was on my computer pretty late and like I couldn't focus anymore. My eyes were hurting. I was getting a headache. And it's very easy to get burnt out. And when you guys get to that point, you're not going to be very receptive to the information. So sometimes it's better to just kind of after we're done with our call, just go to bed, decompress. Uh, you guys gonna get to a point where you're gonna start dreaming of code. I don't know if you guys have gotten to that point, but you guys start dreaming of code. It happened to me. You'll be dreaming of code and think about function. Once you guys start doing personal projects, uh, you'll probably run into some issue and then you'll go to sleep and then you'll wake up in the middle of the night because you dreamt of the solution and somehow it works. I swear to you, it happens. Uh, and I don't know if you guys ever seen what's that show? Is it Queen's Gambit? Is that girl that does chess? You guys ever seen that show? Um,
Yes.
yeah, she's like staring at the ceiling and she's playing chess in her mind by just looking at the ceiling. She like breaks it off into a chessboard. You guys can start doing that. I promise you. Uh, and it's gonna happen, but that's okay. It's part of the process. If you guys feel a little discouraged about it, you feel like you don't understand it yet, that's fine. That's the main point of this course of Foundations of Programming. So you guys don't feel what you're feeling now in the immersive program. Imagine doing this in the immersive program for the first time ever. You have not seen it. And every new day is you're just moving on, next. It's buttload of assignments, you're doing all this work. Uh my class was like 43 people, right? You guys are a lot smaller, so it was like a lot of people to kind of split the load when it came to like them helping people out. Um, I've seen smaller classes of 20. But imagine doing this in immersive program where it's a fire hose of information. Right now, it's a lot more digestible. It's one day at a time. It's smaller pieces, and the assignment, we're doing 1, 2 assignments. Uh, so if you feel discouraged right now, that's okay. This is the time to feel discouraged. In the immersive program, it'll be easier. I promise you. This is the main reason for foundations of programming. So you guys avoid this in the actual course itself, right? So don't feel discouraged. Stick with it. I say that because yesterday I logged off and someone left the Slack channel. I don't know who left. Uh, I don't know if that person had been here the entire time or what, or they just felt discouraged last night and they just like left the Slack channel. And they're like, I can't do this. I don't know what it was, but someone left. And then we realized, some of you guys might feel a little overwhelmed. And I have to repeat to you, uh, it's okay. You're not gonna get it right away. You guys have 3 more weeks of this, and then you program itself for like 4 months. But I've yet to see someone that has made it through the immersive program and then did not get it. I promise you, it'll come to you. Just keep trying, keep debugging, keep messing with it. But yeah, so that concludes my rant. Let's go ahead and start off today's class with some demonstrations. Specifically, Justin. I saw Justin's video. That was awesome. If anyone else wants to, demonstrate their calculator and what they got, let's, I'll take some volunteers. We'll start with Justin. And I would like a different one besides Justin, mainly because although I am proud of your work, Justin, some of the stuff you do is a little advanced for some other people. So I would like somebody else that did not go overboard as well. So Justin, let's see yours first. Let me stop sharing.
Give me 1 second to load her up here.
Hey Justin, what are those TD tags? I've never used those before. I saw TD tag on your code. You're muted, by the way.
That's just HTML for a table.
Okay.
So it's like TR, TD, whatever order those might be. We'll take a look here.
That's new to me. We always learn something new.
Yeah, that's old school, like back in the geosites days, early 90s stuff. So, um, but yeah, let's pull up the code and take a look at that. So that's how I did this, is I just made these a row of 4. So I did like, I created a div for the whole box. I just did box in a box, right? So I did a div for a box, and then I made a table ID calc so I could do the styling. And then I made a secondary ID so I could just do this half of the styling. But see, yeah, TR is table something, like table row. Um, and so then I said, okay, I want 4. I want this to be 4 wide. So that take this box and make it 1, 2, 3, 4 wide. And then I adjusted the size based on the div box after that. And then again, we have table row, and then I don't know what this stands for, but it's basically the things in the row TD, table something. Um, but then I did 1,
Got
2,
it.
3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what kept it in line. That way I didn't have to mess with grid, and I didn't have to do all the nonsense with all the CSS stuff, because that was a pain. I tried it and I hated it. So I went back to just simplifying it. Um, and that's just from the, once I built one, it was literally just copy paste and then add in 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. So while it looks like a lot of code, I really only wrote like that, right?
Question,
Yeah.
and it's not wrong. But why did you decide to do your to add your functions and your clicks within your HTML and not in the JavaScript? It's not wrong, I
It
guess. It
was,
just shows in your thought process.
yeah, it was not a real thought process. This was a quick and dirty way to test. So I would go through and I'd test button 1. And then when I got button 1, I just, did a quick, what is it, Control X, and then added it all in. It was for speed, not for any other
Okay.
reason. Because I knew it was linked and all that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I had a real hard time just getting that. And so that's what I was doing there. Um, and so once I got that, I just made a quick way to put it all in quickly. So,
Okay.
but yeah, basically one of these is all the same. So once I had that, it was just copy paste. And that's why I did it this way for simplicity. If you look, I only have like 3 boxes, right? I have the H1, which is outside of the scope, and then I have div class, which is basically a whole body tag, and then table, which is just this box here. So a box for this, a box for this, and a box for all of it. That was my styling. CSS is just a quick, so you can see all that. Star Bing, do everything. H2, this, calc scheme, all of this, TRTD here, the buttons themselves. The results is this window here. And then result background is also this window here. So,
Can you show us the math being done on your JavaScript file?
sort of. Again, I cheated. So if you look here, I used the math.js. So my order of operations and all that, I didn't do that. Math.js is doing that. I brought in a function to take care of all the real hard math.
That's awesome.
So
And I wanted to make sure that you pointed it out, right? Because that's
yeah,
also an option. And honestly, highly recommend it. What's the point of you guys hard coding something if it's already done for you,
people a
right?
lot smarter than me did that,
Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of honestly being a developer. We laugh at it, but it's true, and you see that everywhere. We try not to repeat ourselves in our code. If there's a way to automate something, then why not do that, right? We like to go by the try method, right? Do not repeat yourself. So why go out here and repeat what somebody else did, or you know repeat multiple code that you can just automate yourself, or if the code exists or there's a method already pre-built, use it. It's there for you guys. Uh, Now use it sparingly during this class. I will say, all right, I understand this one, but there's gonna be some other stuff that we're gonna do that I would prefer if you guys didn't use built-in methods, and that comes more with the algorithms, and we'll get to that later. But right now, that was a great example of using it. Can you show the class of how that was achieved, of how the math.js?
Yeah, okay, so to import, basically what I did is I looked, before I went through and did this, I said, okay, how do I want the math operators to work? And I did a little bit of testing where I did like 1+1, and I figured out it was gonna take a whole bunch of code to do that. I was like, okay, maybe there's an easier, is there a method? I knew that like Python has a like math.lib library, so I was thinking maybe JavaScript has something like that. So I just got on the MDM sheets and I was just looking around and I stumbled upon math.js and um, just kind of followed the docs as far as how it's laid out and all that. So it's got its own documents and support system. What I didn't see here that I asked for Roger's help on last night was actual importation, because I'm just not familiar with the JavaScript method of doing that. And so he showed me that once I had this in and I was getting an error in my console of the math.js, I knew that it was an import issue. So I went into my HTML sheet and I knew there was these things called CDN scripts. I just didn't know where to find it. Roger found it right away. But by putting this SDN in, it connects to this Cloudflare site and this Ajax API that then automatically runs a script every time this HTML page is called. So it's an import without doing it locally. It's doing it via HTTPS. So um,
Awesome,
yeah.
great
Same
example.
way it calls your app sheet, your app, your JS app, it's calling this Cloudflare site.
Mhm. Thank you very much, Justin. I really appreciate that demonstration.
No problem.
Great work. Really impressed with the outcome. Now, anybody else wants to share this, please do not feel discouraged from Justin. I want to make sure I can see all types of examples, and we can talk through your thought process. Just show us what you got if you guys were able to work on it. If no one worked on it, it's fine. But if there is, I just want to make sure I open that floor for somebody. No?
You're
Okay.
all stuck. Now's a great
Didn't
time
get
to show
very
it.
far.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, show us what you guys did. Even if it wasn't much, right? I just want to make sure that you
Mhm.
guys are being able to bridge that gap from where you guys were yesterday. Were like, I'm struggling trying to understand this, and you know what? Hey, now I kind of understand it, and I was able to get from point A to point B, and at least I got something on my screen working now, right?
So I had went back and redid stuff, and this morning I was learning. So all I have right now is just the button layout, and that's it. So it's just buttons and a screen. And so I don't have the functionality yet.
Okay. Does anyone have any functionality? At least like you got the plus to work, just the plus. No. Okay,
Do
that's fine.
you do you mind showing your code again? Because I was trying to do something similar to what you did. But anytime I would look up anything, chat, GPT, or any sort of outside sources to kind of understand, it was more advanced built-in methods, kind of something similar to what was demonstrated in Justin's, or switch cases, but I wanted something basic to be able to do exactly how you guys put in the lesson.
Yeah, let me go ahead and open it. I haven't touched it. I'll share my screen. Right, so going back to my code from yesterday, right? Um, I added the query selector and event listeners to all my individual buttons. Um, and I kept it simple, right? I didn't add any CSS. I want to make sure the functionality was working, right? Because you guys already know, like, what's the point of having this beautiful calculator if nothing works? My thought process was I need to be able to visualize what I have, right? The user needs to be able to see a display. All right, so we have created a display here. And I need to grab the value that's being pressed into this calculator, right? When I come here and I press the 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, I need to make sure that I can grab that information and save it somewhere and then display it. So that's what the save to display function is doing for each one of these numbers, right? So upon clicking the number 1, we see a display here. The save to display, what it does, it creates a variable called value. It grabs the inner text that belongs within this tag, right? The save to display is assigned to each different tag via the query selector, thanks to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 class. So it knows, hey, I'm gonna grab the text that belongs to this tag that I have grabbed using the document.query selector. It saves the value that's within that tag, which is the text, right? Into this variable. And now that I know what number has been pressed, then I can do something with that number. I grab what input my display currently has. Initially, my display should be empty, right? Right here, I have a div called display, and I have no text in here. So whenever I save it to a variable, it should be empty. So within my JavaScript, I grab that display, I grab its inner text, which has nothing, and I save it to the current value, right? And then I grab that display again, and I change the value because right now it's empty, but later on it might have other numbers. It might have 100, it might have 200, who knows what it might have. So I need to be able to save that value so I can reuse it. And then I add my new value that I added by pressing that button, right? Once I do that, it's being assigned to the inner text, and that's how my display changes. Cool? Now, nothing's being saved yet. It's just being shown on the display because we still haven't figured out what number I want to initially grab, right? I did the 1. Let's do 2. I should add a 0 here so I can do even numbers, but whatever. I want to use 12 as my first number. Once I'm done, how does that usually get saved? Usually once we're done putting the first number, we either do plus, we will subtract, we divide, we multiply, whatever arithmetic we're going to do, that's the button we use. And that button should be able to save the previous number that we had on our display, right? And that method is created here using the add result, right? It pushes the result that's within my display into a variable that I created called all values, right? And essentially just a list because I might have multiple numbers that I'm adding up. So I want to make sure I saved all of them. So I push it in there, right? This is all basic JavaScript still, just adding it to a list. And then once I save that number, I need to clear it again, all right? This display needs to be reset so I can add my second number. So I go to my query selector, I grab that display, and I reset the inner text to a blank string. And because I'm doing the add function, right, I need to switch my Boolean add to true. I'm using this Boolean to track what process I'm currently doing right now, whether I'm adding, whether I'm subtracting, dividing, or multiplying, right? But because this is my add function, I'm only going to switch my add to true. Therefore, as I continue with my operation, I know what I'm doing right now currently is adding. And I use the console log to ensure I can visualize that that number was saved into my all values. This is just a debugging tool I did right here, just so I can visualize it, right? So by pressing add, it's saved into my all values. We can go to console where I visualized it here on line 30, console log. It's an array, and we can see it's saved in here. Now, the result, all right, as we mentioned, I press the plus sign, that reset. Now I need my second number. I do 1, 2. I'm ready to receive the result of what 12 plus 12 is. So the result function is added to my equal sign so I can get a result. And we see here 24. Well, how do I get that? Well, once I was ready to actually get my final result, I went into my all values array. I pushed in the second 12 that was in there. So it's within the all values. I console.log the all values to ensure they actually got added. We see right here, the second item within this list is another 12. And once I have all my values ready to actually add up, I went to an if else check, right? I added an if block and I check, hey, is add true? Am I currently adding right now? And if I am, then I want to actually go to the process of doing the math. And this is just me manually doing the math. What Justin did, he used the math.js built-in method. I hard coded the actual math of it. So I had to loop through the array of the values I'm currently going to be adding, right? And then I'm adding it to a total. I use parse and to convert it from a string to an integer, right? Because it's saved as text, it's not an actual number. And then once the for loop is complete, I have my final total. I now change the result to what my total is, right? So I grab the query selector for a place to put result, change the inner text to total, and then now that I'm done with adding, I set adding back to false, right? And as we mentioned before yesterday, if I wanted to do subtract, I would do something very similar to this, right? I would add that last value I was working on here into my array. Right? And then I would check if subtract is equal to true, then I would create a variable called, I can make it total or I can make it result, whatever you want to call it. You say let total is equal to, and this is where we'll get difficult, right? This is why Justin was using the math.js. I would have to grab the first number. If it's only two numbers in there, I would want to grab like the very first number in there, and subtract the second one in the array. I'll have to loop through and so on and so forth, right? We're not going to do that, but that's how that would work, right? And whenever it gets to result, it would check whether I'm adding, whether I'm subtracting, whether I'm multiplying or dividing. Cool?
Appreciate it.
No problem. All right. Let me get a thumbs up. I think, yeah. If you go to your React on your Zoom, let me get a thumbs up if you completed the day of the week. And if not, give me a thumbs down so I can see how many of you guys did it or not.
If we did what? I'm sorry.
The day of the week assignment.
Oh, didn't even look at that.
Thumbs down, thumbs down, thumbs down. Okay. I see more thumbs down than I see thumbs up. Good job, Kim and James, for doing it. But we're gonna take some time to actually do the day of the week. For those of you that did complete it, if I'm pretty sure I think you guys did not finish the back calculator. We're gonna do one or the other, right? So if you guys haven't touched the day of the week, we're gonna go ahead and do that. We'll check it out real quick. Let's close up these tabs. Right, day of the week. Open it up on live server. It should look something like this. It shouldn't work. I should be put Saturday and it does not work. Correct, it does not. All right, so the assignment is to complete a small application that lets the user know
Your
if
screen
they.
share in Slack right now.
Oh, uh-oh. Stop reading my messages. All right.
Anybody screen shoot that? We got the answer.
All right, so your assignment is to complete the small application, right? It lets the user know if they inputted a weekday, weekend, or they gave the incorrect day of the week. Make sure your application is case insensitive, so Saturday is not treated the same as Saturday in all caps, or Saturday where it looks like it's camel case in some form or manner, right? So you should be able to put in your Saturday and it will say like this is a day of the week or not, right? Or wrong input. Cool. We'll take 15 minutes to do that, and then we will move on with today's lesson. All right, let's go ahead and come back to our camera so we can continue today's lesson. Go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully, the assignment you guys just did get a little bit better example of how to work with your document query selector and just DOM in general. But we're gonna go ahead and close that chapter for a little bit, and we're gonna move on to lesson 5. And actually, the previous lesson we just did is gonna tie into APIs and using JavaScript to manipulate our text even further. All right, so what are APIs, right? So an API is essentially just a simple interface for a complex action, right? And the best way I can explain that is by using this menu from this restaurant, right? It lets you communicate from your computer to some server somewhere to bring information, right? Take the menu at a restaurant, right? It's a simple interface. The API is the menu itself, right? It lets you go to the menu and look for certain things. And there's a variety of different APIs out there if you guys do a quick Google search. And all these APIs give you access to different things that are stored in certain databases, right? It lets you communicate with the kitchen to let them know what we want to eat, right? And the API we're going to be using first, as an example, is going to be our dog API, right? Uh, Essentially, what this application does, it provides for us an interface to be able to put in requests from our menu to the kitchen, which is, in this sense, the database, right? Using our restaurant menu example, when you guys go to, for example, Texas Roadhouse, right, and you want to get a nice big juicy steak, you guys look into the menu, which is your API, and you're finding what you're trying to order. Once you get what you want to order, you tell your server via, your own verbal commands what you're looking for, right? You tell them, hey, I want, this kind of steak cooked at this in this manner. These are my sides, and so on and so forth, right? You give them your request. That is the request you're giving, very similar to how you would an API. You give your menu, your server, the request of what you're looking for. And if that request was good, right? Let's say they have that in their kitchen, in this sense, their database. It'll go back, check if it's there, and if everything checks out, it'll bring it back to you and present you with your nice juicy dinner, right? And that's pretty much how the APIs work, right? API standing for Application Programming Interface. Um, how do we use APIs? We use the APIs by our URLs, right? We see here a nice little depiction. You guys are going to be your end consumers, right? You are guys going to be using your JavaScript to put in your request to an API. It's going to take that request via the URL that you guys are going to give it. All right, is going to go to its backend, check, its database. Do we have this that we requested? Which that request is going to be embedded into the URL you give it, and if so, it's going to give it back to you. The server will hear the request and respond with some information. All right, the information is going to be given to you is going to be in the form of a JSON format, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Right. Essentially, what that is if you guys are familiar with Python, it's kind of like a dictionary. We went over it earlier. It's your literal objects of JavaScript, right? It has a key value pair, um, and that's how the information is delivered to you, right? Let's look at the dog API. Most APIs are going to have some form of documentation to explain to you how to properly use it. The dog API is actually a very nice, simple API. It's very straightforward. There's a variety of different APIs, some a little bit more complex than others. There are different types of APIs as well, right? We have REST APIs, which is the ones that you guys have been using. Those use simple stateless HTTP. There are SOAP APIs, GraphQL, gRPC. I would be lying to you if I use all 4 of these APIs before. The ones that I'm most commonly used to are the REST APIs, putting in HTTP requests, right? And this is an example of a REST API. Here we see a small little demo of how it works, right? this is the type of URL that you're going to be given it. And this is the response that you will be receiving from your API. This is what JSON format looks like. Is essentially an object, open and close curly brackets with key value pairs. We see here for this specific API, it's going to give you 2 key value pairs if you were to send it this URL, right? One being a message with the value being a URL of a JPEG image, right? And then the status of your request, whether it was successful or not, right? We can press fetch here and it should generate us the picture on the right. Notice that the URL has random, right? APIs structure their URLs in different formats. This one specifically, to access this API, you have to go to https://dog.co. We're using the API, right? This is very similar to a directory on your computer when you guys access your folders and whatnot. That's pretty much how it's set up. These are their endpoints. It goes into the API, it goes under breeds, under image, and then it chooses a random one, right? And this is what it responds to you with. And we can keep pressing fetch. We see here, because it's random, it's going to give us a random picture within its database. That's not a freaking dog. That's a lie. That's a fox, dude. Anyways, but yeah, so that's how that works, right? You can go to documentation for almost every single API out there, and you'll see something like this, right? These are the endpoints, as I mentioned to you before. What are endpoints? That's pretty much like the directory of what you're trying to reach, right? If you're trying to get list of all breeds, a random image by breed, you're gonna see that the URL is going to change, right? The endpoint changes. If we go to list all breeds, we see breeds, list all. For a random image, we see the endpoint change. It goes from breeds to image and then random. By breed, it changes it right here. Instead of having images, it has the breed specifically, and then it has images as the final endpoint. For subbreed, we see hound, and then we see a list of all the types of hounds. And then we can even go do here to the breeds list and just type different stuff in to get something very specific, right? This is a very simple API, probably the simplest you'll see out here, and it shows you what you should be receiving from the request. Now, let's go ahead and move forward and see how it works. This is the code for how you're going to interact with the API, right? This is the old way of doing things. There's 2 manners of talking to an API. There's the old way and there's the new way. And the reason we're going to teach both is because depending on what company you go to, all right, people do things in different standards. Some code might be outdated. When you get there here, if you're not working at a startup, you're going to be working with, some legacy code that's been there for years, that someone else built a long time ago, and you're going to have to parse through that code and kind of understand it. So the chances that you might encounter something similar to this are pretty high. So we're going to learn both the old way and the newish way of doing things. I say newish because it's been out for a while, but it's what's most standard, right? So the old way, you're going to start by fetch, right? This is all going to be done within your JavaScript document, very similar to how we did, the DOM, document.query selector, right? You're going to start with fetch, open and close parentheses, and within fetch, you're going to add the URL, right? The endpoint of what you're trying to reach, right? If we see here, this is an example of the endpoint that they use for the dog API, right? In quotation marks, they put the URL they're looking for. Notice it's random. And then they use the .then, right? What this tells your code, what this is saying is, I want you to go to this API endpoint and grab me something, right? It's going to put in that request. But after that request is done, you have to verbally say, or I guess, by text say, what do I want to do after the information is received? What do I want to do with it? That's what that .then is saying. Well, then once the information is received, it's going to come in as a response, right? So it says response, and then I want to create it into JSON, right? You're going to parse through the code that you're getting, and you're going to convert it into JSON. After that, we use the .then again, because after we receive it, it gets converted typically into data. The data, we're gonna open it up, and I want to print out the data within here, right? Console.log data. Here we have a dot catch in case we get an error, right? And let's see what that looks like. Fetch request response, right? You should be able to open up your DevTools and see something very similar to this. So I already have it pulled up, right? If you go to lesson 5, under lesson 5, go to doc photo. You'll find your doc photo HTML, right click, open it with live server. You should receive something similar to this. As I was, you won't because I already did it. Don't look, don't look. Okay, there we go. You're gonna see something very similar to this, right? This is gonna be the default code you have. It's pretty much the exact same as you saw in the code snippet, right? It's not going to work for you guys. There should not be an image when you open it on live server. But what you see, if you go to your developer tools, right click, press inspect, and go to your console, you're gonna see the response that you actually get, right? Because if you recall on the code, we put console.log data. And we're console logging the information we received, the data, right? And this is the message that we got. We got a JSON message, right? We see the opening close curly brackets. We see the key value pairs, message, and status. We can expand it to get a better view of it. These are the key value pairs. One is message and one is status. The code's already built for you. The only thing that you guys have to do, which you kind of already saw, you need to manipulate the image tag within your HTML document, right? If you check the HTML, there should only be one thing within your body besides the script here, linking your JavaScript, and it should be your image tag, right? We see source and all are empty. You're gonna use what you've learned, document.query selector within your JavaScript, grab that image tag and then change the source, right? Now, how do I change the source, Roger? You haven't thought of that? You can do a quick Google search or quick GPT, chat GPT. How do I change the source? And it will tell you, right? Nothing fancy there. And just change it, right? You're gonna add the source. You're gonna add the message into the source, right? Now, something I want to note. You can't just change the source to whatever data is. You actually have to go into data and use object notation to grab the key value pair you're looking for, right? That's basic JavaScript. I'm gonna allow you guys to give that a try for about 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about it. It's honestly just a one-liner. All right? Give that a try. Julian. Straightforward, guys?
I'm confused.
Okay. What's confusing?
I don't even know what to ask. I just don't even know, don't even
Okay.
know where to start with this.
Yeah, let's go ahead and check it out together. Let me share my screen. I want to give you guys a chance to see if you guys can make sure you guys got it before I just completely did it on my own. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Yeah, okay, awesome.
Yep, we can see it. Yep.
So I talked about making a button, I'll do that in a bit. So we have our image source right here. It's empty and we need to manipulate it, right? We already have the code to grab the data. We can refresh our page here and it's sending us our JSON data. We constantly log the data. Now we want to grab specifically the message, right? And because it's an object, we need to use object notation to kind of dive deeper into the nest within it to grab specific stuff within here, right? We want to grab the message key so we can receive the value of the URL. Well, how do how do we grab stuff within an object? If you guys recall, your introduction to coding, it should show you how to use object notation. So we can do dot message, and we see here when you refresh this, we don't get the entirety of the data message anymore. Now we're only grabbing the URL, right? Because we know it's returning the data, but we only want to use the data member message. So we can console log both of them to kind of visualize it even more. So on the first console log, we console log the entire JSON data, but the second time we console log, we're only grabbing the message, right? And we can even grab the status, data.status. And we can grab all three. We can grab the entirety of the object. We can grab there's just the message or just the status itself. Well, we only need the message, right? Because the message was containing the URL of our image. So we're only gonna have to use the message itself. We can get rid of status. We can get rid of the entirety of the data object, and we're just gonna grab the message itself. And we want to add that to our image tag. So let's check out our tag, right? There's no class. Oh, wrong one. There's no class, it's just the image. You could add a class if you want, or we just grab the image right off the bat. So after console log, we're gonna do document dot query selector, grab the image. And if you guys did some research for the image tag to manipulate the source, it's literally just dot src, right? And then you assign something to the source itself. So we're gonna assign data dot message in here. Now it should refresh on its own, and it gives us our nice little picture, right? And I mentioned to you guys, well, what if I wanted to make a button to do this? I don't want this to refresh every single time manually, or I don't want to load my page right off the bat and get this picture. I want to be able to create a button and do it myself, right? So if we go to our HTML document, we're gonna have to create that button. So we're gonna do button, and we'll name the button generate dog. All right, we see our picture right here. It's still refreshing every single time and showing us a picture, but we're gonna change that in a second. Right. Now this button, we need to manipulate that button. So we'd have to do document dot query selector. Let's grab the button. And then we're gonna do dot add event listener because we want to do something every time we press that button. Right. And the event listener is gonna be clicking. And now here, we're gonna create a function that every time I click this button, it's gonna send that API request. So we can make the function in here, right? Like I showed you guys earlier, or we can wrap this bad boy in a function, right? So we can say function get dog, and then move this within the function, right? And then I could put get dog here. And that's going to allow me to do something with it, right? Now, the button should generate the picture for us. Right? This function, get dog, that sends that fetch request is only going to work within this function. So now when I refresh the page, it's not giving me a picture anymore because get dog only works if I use it with my button, right? Because before it wasn't within a function. Before it was just independent code. So whenever I loaded my screen, it went to my JavaScript file and loaded my code from top to bottom. It got to the fetch and it immediately put in that fetch request to the API, which caused my web page to constantly give me that picture. But now because I wrapped it within a function, I have to call that function for it to work. Well, I call it every time I press the button. Now, are you still confused, Kim?
I'm trying to type it up and see if I can get it to work. And I'm not keeping up with you, but I will.
Okay. So did
Roger,
that? Yes,
I have a question when you finish.
I have an answer. Give it to me.
Okay, so just before I saw what you did using the document query selector, I had used the get element by ID, and I had the image ID dot source. And so I was thinking that would give the update to the source attribute, but apparently it didn't. It had kept going local. It was trying to go to 127.00.1. And so,
Show me
but
your code.
oh, all right, hold on.
I think I know what you did.
Okay, hold on. Let me do show screen. Where are we? Oh, here we go. Share window capture. Share. And and so once I changed it to an image, then it worked. But when I had it as just the
Yes,
just as then
because
it
you're using get element by ID. It's looking for an ID. I don't know how the image worked.
no 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 no. What
Okay.
you see on the right side, that was when I had changed it to the IMG, the way you had it. But no, that's not from this.
Okay.
No.
Refresh it. Refresh it.
Um, hold on. Let me see. Okay. Yeah. So like, why is it still work? It wasn't working earlier. Why? Yeah, it wasn't. This
I
was
mean,
not.
it's working now because the ID is image, right? You put get element by ID. It was image. If you ever want to go back to your a different state in your code, just press Control Z, and it'll kind of like undo changes.
Yeah. So I'll show you. Okay. So yeah, this was how I initially had it, and then I put the dot message.
Correct.
And so,
Because data, what you're trying to assign as a source was an entire object, right? We
okay.
only wanted the URL, but you have to go into the object using dot notation, like we did dot message, to
Mhm.
get the key value pair of where that URL was located at, right? Because the image is only going to work with URL, right? The source is only for a URL. Because you didn't add a URL, it wasn't working, right? So put it back to actually, if you right click your browser, put inspect and go to your console, and let's look at what data is, you're gonna see it's an entire object. The URL is hidden within the key value pair of message. That's why it wasn't working.
Okay. So here's the I'm waiting for it to blow back up. Hold on my screen. What is it doing?
It's fine. I can see it, right? You see there, the first line, it's an object, right? It
Yes.
has it's still nested. The URL is nested within that object. So whenever you assign it to the source, you are assigning the entire object within it, and it doesn't know where the URL is. It only looks for a URL. It's not smart enough to go within your object, look for what a URL is until it finds it. Which is why we have to deliberately only grab the message that's going to return to us the value of where our URL is located at.
Got it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, you have to. When it comes to JSON, guys, that's probably what you're gonna have the most trouble with is trying to parse through this large JSON file. I'm sorry, JSON object. Right now, this is a very simple JSON object. It's only 2 lines. You're going to encounter JSON responses that are like 50, 100 lines of data. You have to parse through all of them, and they're gonna be super nested. You're like, well, where's my URL? And right now, it's as simple as going data.message. Later on, it might be data dot like message, pictures, and then find like URLs, and then find a specific URL you're looking for. You have to get good at looking at the object and try to find where the information's at, and then get into that object. Right? How you doing, Kim? You finally understand it? You're muted.
No, I'm not going to tonight. I'm just too tired, but I will get this figured out over the weekend for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep moving forward. That way you have the rest of the recording. So that takes care of our dog, right? We displayed a random dog photo we got from the API, and it loaded every single time we refreshed it, but then we even added a button there. Am I even sharing right now?
No,
not
nope,
really.
you're not.
Okay. All right. So we did the dog API moving forward. So what is happening every time I refresh the page? Every time that you refresh it, essentially you put in a request. It was going through your code, it got to fetch, and it was running automatically, right? So it put in that request, it went to the API, right? The interface. It took your information, it sent it to the database, right? The kitchen in the back. It checked your request, and then it checked the database, and then compare and contrast, like, do I have what this person is requesting of me? Yes. Okay. Well, here is the information you asked for. It sent it back to the API, and then the API sent it to you in the response of data. Right? Query parameters. So we saw a small example of this within the dog API. We were able to look at breeds, all breeds, even get random, and it changed our URL. Right? Some APIs are a little bit more complex, and one of the more complex ones you'll see today is going to be the cocktail one. Right? This is the cocktail API. We see this URL. It's from the cocktail database.com. And then we have the different endpoints. It has the API. It goes to JSON version 1.1. And then it's searching for something, and it's searching for margarita. Right? It waits for the response, and then it converts it to JSON. After JSON, it converts it to data. We go into the data, and it returns this, right? This is what the data looks like after we receive it. As I mentioned to you guys before, sometimes you're going to receive 2-liners, and then you'll receive stuff like this, right? It returns to you a JSON object. It only has one key value pair. It's called drinks. And the value it holds is an array, right? This array holds multiple key value pairs as well, right? We see here at each index, there's another dictionary or another object that has other key value pairs. ID drink has the value of 11007. The other key is string drink. The value is the name of the drink in a string. We have alternative, we have tags, videos. As you see, it's null, so there's nothing saved as a video. Let's check out that cocktaildatabase.com. Cocktail DB. Right? This is the API for it. Let me go to API, and we see here the documentation varies. Some are more easier than others, user friendly. This one straight up just tells you how it should look like if you're looking for specific things by either name, the first letter, or search ingredient by name. Look up a cocktail by the ID, and this is the structure of how that URL needs to be created. Notice that for the most part, they all start with like JSON version 1.1, and then it changes up once it gets past this first one, right? If we're searching, right, it starts with search, and it needs this part right here with an equal sign before it takes in the name. This one is doing a search by first letter, takes the letter at the end of it. These are not constant through all APIs. Different APIs will have different structures of what their URLs look like. That's the part or the point of the documentation. It tells you how their API is structured. That way you can use it. You can't just go into your JSON file and make up some fake URL thinking it's gonna work. All APIs create their own endpoints when they're being made, and they structure it in what manner they think is best suited for them. This one looks up for the by ID. Right, we see the ID at the end. Notice that this one uses a different endpoint. It uses a lookup, not search. This one uses lookup by ID is the ingredient by ID. Look up a random cocktail. It no longer has lookup or search. It's just random.php. Now, let's go ahead and check that out. This one is Margarita, and it returns to us the object with an array of 6. This one, notice how they changed the name of the drink they're searching for. Now it's Martini. Well, this one had a lot more types of martinis within their database. So we got a lot bigger array here. Right? So here comes the student practice. Let's check it out. Go to cocktails, right click our HTML, open it on live server. It should not work. Martini. All right, it's not working. So we have the cocktail HTML. We see here the assignment is to write the code that will allow the user to enter a cocktail and have the DOM render the name, photo, and instruction on how to make it on the button click. We have the header, which is called which cocktail, the input tag, which allows us to add the item we're looking for. So right off the bat, we need to be able to grab the information within the input tag. All right, so we know that we have to probably have to do inner text by grabbing, like doing query selector, querying the input tag, and then grabbing the text that's within it, right? We have the button called get cocktail. The button is probably gonna have to make the API request, so that's probably where we're gonna put the fetch request that we talked about earlier. And once we get the information, we need to display the name and instructions of how to make that cocktail. So we're probably gonna have to manipulate the H2 header as well as the image header, so we can add the picture, and then manipulate the H3 tag to manipulate the instructions, right? So we're probably have to do query selector on all 3 of these, and then use the data that we received from our fetch request to manipulate its text. Right? Let's look at the JavaScript. The JavaScript, like before, already pre-made for you the request. We can open up our inspect tool, go to console. We can even refresh it. This one specifically is looking for Margarita. It's already pre-made for you, Margarita. And we see in the console, it returns to us an object, right? It only holds 1 key value pair. The first key is drinks, and its value is an array. If we want to see that array, we want to expand it. It shows it right here. We can open up this key value pair, and the array has 6 different items starting with index 0 all the way to index 5. And each one is another object. So it's an object within an array that's within an object. This is where it gets important to know how to access items within an array and how to access items within an object. All right, so this is where your JavaScript skills come with knowing how to grab information within those. Right? How do we grab stuff out of an array? Using index notation, or we can even use a for loop so we can grab every single one from there. How do we grab stuff out of an object? You guys saw earlier from the dog API using that dot notation to grab stuff. Just a quick demo of that before I let you guys try it. Right here, it's returning data, and this is what our data looks like. Well, if I wanted to grab the drinks, how would that work? Who can explain to me what's the code for going into our first object?
So we have to access drinks.
Yep. How do we do that?
So drinks is an array, so it'd be drinks.
No, drinks is a key.
No,
The
drink.
the value is an array, right?
Yes.
It's important.
So
I need to make sure that you guys understand this. Continue.
Okay. So the value is an array. Will you put it back? I can't read it now.
Yeah, I mean it's right here.
Okay, so drinks is the key. The value is an array. So since it's an array, we access it by the IDX. I mean, from the index.
Okay, but we can't get the array until we grab the key first, right? So how do we
Okay.
grab that array?
Wouldn't it
What do
be
you-
data drinks?
Data.drinks. Yes. Perfect. Because data itself, data is the object, right? So to
Yes.
grab the stuff in the object, we have to use dot notation, right? So the first step is getting through the first object. We're gonna do data.drinks. And now we see here, we had two different responses. The first response is return to me the entirety of data. The second response is return to me the entirety of drinks, which is an array. Now, let's say you want to grab the very first item within this array. We'll make it simple, right? How do I grab the first item within data.drinks?
Just do 0.
Yeah. So console.log, I'm making another one so we can kind of see everything. Data.drinks. And then now we're working with an array. So it should be open and close brackets. It should be 0. We see here the third response is now actually returning to us what's at item 0. And it's another object. So we are within an object, within an array, and now we're inside of an object. So what are we looking for? Well, first and foremost, let's focus on the name first. Let's grab that name so we can add it to our name. How do we grab that name?
Is the name just Margarita? Is that, or is it, where is it?
Yeah, correct. The name is Margarita. You're gonna have to look at your object, right? This is what index 0 is. It's an object with key value pairs. The first key is date modified. Second one is ID drink. Next one is string alcoholic, then string category. How do we grab the name?
Wouldn't it be dot string drink, str drink?
Correct. Right, it'll be console.log data. We went into data, we grab drinks, we got the first item in the index, and now we want to get string drinks. String drink.
Singular.
Yep. Boom, it returns to us Margarita. That's how we go into this nested object, right? You have to notice what you're working with. Is this an object? Is this a list? Is this, are we working with key value pairs? What is a list? What kind of list is it? It's a list of strings, or is it a list of other objects, or you might even have list of lists, right? So it's important to know how do we access these things so we can nest our way into it. And that's how we get that name. And then from there on, I'll allow you to work on it on your own. Once you grab the stuff, you want to manipulate the name, the image, the instructions, so on and so forth, right? So I'll let you guys try that out. Time is 7:31. Take a 10-minute break before you guys go into it. And then at 7:40, start it up. And we will go over it at 8. Okay? So, all right, to cover this assignment, we already have it pre-built for us, right? We can go ahead and refresh this. Let's get rid of this line 2. And we're getting the JSON file or the JSON object that we wanted, right? But we need to get specifically the drink itself. So let's go ahead. Let's start saving stuff, right? Because it's cool and all that we have it, but we're gonna need a name, we're gonna need an image, and then we're gonna need an instruction. So let's save it to something. So we can create let name is equal to data dot, let's look at the data. Hold on. How do we get the name? All right, we have to go into drinks, so data dot drinks. And then once we get into the drink, we're just get the basic default margarita. We have to go into the array, so we need to get the first one, so it's gonna be 0. Once we go into the array, and we got 0, we need to do string drink, right? So string drink. So if I did this correctly, it should have the name that we want. Console margarita, awesome. So we have the name. Now let's also get the image. Let drink image equal data dot drinks. We know it's gonna be 0. And then the only difference is we're not gonna get string drink. We have to grab the image. So let's look at it. String drink gave us the name of the drink itself, but we want an image. Let's look at our data. Where's the image at? Well, I see an image right here. This is a URL, and I know it's an image because it ends in .jpeg. So string drink dumb, probably like thumbnail, is what it stands for. So we'll probably have to do string drink dumb. So dot string drink dumb. Right? Let's console that log it so we can make sure that we're doing what we should be doing. Drink img. Yeah, here you go. Here's our image. Cool. So we got our image. Next is gonna be our instructions. So we need to make an instruction. So let drink instructions is equal to data dot drinks 0. Let's check where the instructions are at. Okay, we're grabbing the default one. We see here string instructions. There's some other ones. Probably, I don't know, is it just Dutch? I don't know. English is my second language. So we'll use this one. So we're gonna grab string dot drinks. So up here, dot string, ingredients, my bad, not drinks. String ingredients. Now let's, once again, I'm doing console log because I don't know, you know, let's say I'm new to this. I don't know how to work with objects and whatnot. I don't know if I'm grabbing the right thing. And we see here, it's the wrong one. All right, console log drink instructions, it did not work. It's giving me undefined. So obviously that was incorrect. So let's check that again. Why am I not grabbing the instructions that I was looking for? If you guys notice something I noticed, let me know. Oh, I put ingredients. I'm dumb. Instructions. There we go. That's what I was looking for, right? It gave me back the instructions. So I have the name, the drink image, and I'll change image to URL, drink URL. It's confusing me. Drink URL and drink instructions. All right, naming conventions are very important. I'm gonna take a quick pause and theory off the bat. As you guys code, make sure that you guys are not just putting very generic names. Like, make sure it references what you are actually creating. When you create variables, your naming convention is important because chances are you're probably not going to be the only person using this code. Somebody else is probably going to come by and read your code, and they should be able to understand what the heck you are doing, what you're coding, what variables you've created, as well as the functions, right? As a developer that's probably working with you, if I come here and you have like some funky names, you just have like URL, like URL to what? Like what is the URL going to? So make sure you guys are making a good habit of making some readable naming conventions and that they make sense. So I have my name, I have my drink URL, and I have my drink instructions. Now, here comes the part of actually putting this bad boy within its respective location. So let's check out the name. I want to put my name right after this tag. Where is that tag at? We see here it's within this h2 tag. So I'm going to add a class. Class is equal to, because I can easily just query select and grab the h2. But keep in mind, how big is your website? Are you probably going to have other h2 tags? We have to add a class. Make sure we add that to our standards. Let's go ahead and create a class. There's no reason to just grab the h2 tag directly. We'll call this drink name. Let's go back to our JavaScript. and let's actually assign it. So we're gonna do document.query selector. We're gonna grab it by the class. So drink name. And then I want to manipulate the content of my my h2 tag, right? But there's something about this. I don't want to just replace the name. What if we add a colon here? What if we remove this class? Let's remove it. And let's add something within this RH2 tag. We're gonna do span. And what we're gonna replace is gonna be the context of this span. That way we don't replace the name every single time. Right? That way the name stays. The only thing we're gonna change is what comes afterwards. Right? This will be drink name. And I'll show you what that does. Martini. Right? That way we keep that name header, but we're only going to add the actual name to the side of it so it looks nice and neat, right? So we're gonna manipulate the span, not the h2. So drink name, and then we're gonna do dot inner text is equal to name. Boom. Let's remove that default that I had here, which is Martini, because I don't need it anymore. Because now I know that my thing is working. Margarita, baby, let's go. Right, so we have the name, it's working. That's how we manipulate those tags. Remember, we're still using the doc. We're using the document.query selector. Okay, so we got the name. Now I want to let's add the instructions for now. Or we could do it in order. Let's do image. So document.query selector. Let's grab the image. Where's that image at? Let's go back to our HTML. Okay, our image is supposed to be right after our h2 header. I'll add a class name just for making sure it's unique. I'll call this drink image. Now in our query selector, I'll grab the class dot drink image. And then I'm going to change the source. As we learned from the previous assignment, we can change source by doing .src and then assign drink URL. Bada bing, bada boom. Right? Cool. It's in here. Now we have our image. Well, next is to actually manipulate the instructions. Document.query selector. Where's our instructions at? Let's go to our HTML. Oh, it's an H3. But what do we say? We're going to add class names. I don't want to remove that instructions. I'm going to add a colon here. And then within here, I'm going to add the span again. Or I'm going to add a p tag because it's technically like a huge paragraph of instructions. And then I'll add the class name to that p tag, and it'll be drink instructions. Cool. Go back here. Let's grab that drink instructions p tag, and then we're going to change the inner text and assign it the drink instruction that we saved earlier. And there you have it. Right? Cool. We're getting what we wanted to do, but the assignment is not complete. We are missing something. I need to be able to go to my search bar, type in martini, right? And press get cocktail and have it change. So, how do we do that? Well, we need to create a button. The button is created, my bad. So the button is there, but we need to manipulate that button to do something. So, is there a class name for this? There is not. So we'll call it class, call it get cocktail. Oh, my bad. Get cocktail. Let's put the button above here. We're gonna do document.query selector. Get button. Oh, it's not button. What's it called? Get cocktail. My bad. Get cocktail. We have to add an event listener, right? We want to do something. We'll add it on the click. And now the function itself, we'll call it get cocktail. It's not created yet. That's why it's in red right now. So we'll do function, get cocktail, open the bad boy up, and we can move all this within that function. Right? That way it only works when I click it. Okay, so it's working so far. All right, we're getting the cocktail when I click the button, but it's not doing exactly what we want it to do. It's only grabbing margarita. Well, because this is in the manner that it is, right? So, how do we change that? Who has any ideas?
Would we give a variable to that, the result of that? And then put that in there instead?
Correct, right? So, what if when we click it, we grab the text, right, that's within this input tag, and then we do maybe some string interpolation, right, and put that bad boy at the end, right? We'll leave this empty, and then we'll replace it with the value of whatever the text is within our input tag. So we can do that. We can say let drink equal this dot inner text. And let's just make sure that's actually doing what it should be doing. Or we can use a console tool. Let's say margarita. Okay, so it printed out get cocktail. Okay, so it didn't do exactly what I was wanting to do. Why not? What did it give me? What happened? I'll take guesses. Well, print it out on my console.
Well, why does it say get cocktail above the picture there on the button?
Yeah, right. So we did it's not supposed to do that, right? Why did it give it to me? Well, we can always see where it's coming from. It says on my app.js file on line 5, it's printing get cocktail. Well, what is the cocktail from? We're console logging drink. Drink is this dot inner text. What text is it getting? And what is
The
what is it
text
saving?
that you clicked on. It's getting the text that you clicked on.
Yeah, it's getting my button, right? Because I use this dot inner text. So maybe this dot inner text isn't what we're looking for, right? Because this function is within what? It's within my button. It's gonna when I do this dot inner text, it's not grabbing the text within my my input tag because this function is currently being called on the button. And what's the text of the button? It's get cocktail, right? This is the text it's grabbing on the button. And we don't want to do that. So maybe change where we're grabbing the text. So let's say document.query selector. We want to grab the input tag. So here's my input tag. Let's create a class and call this user input. So we're going to grab that user input. And then we want to grab the inner text from here. Right? That's what we want to save into our drink. So let drink equals the inner text of our user input tag. Right? Now, let's try that again. Martini. I can't spell to save my damn life. Okay. That is not working. Why? I think it's not inner text because it's input tag. It might be inner HTML. Martini. No.
What about value?
Value. There we go. I think that's the one we're looking for. Thank you. Sorry, I have not done this in a while. Martini. There you go. Good job. Whoever came up with value. Good value. So dot value. So that gave me the martini. Now that I got that, I can change this. How do we do string interpolation? Who can tell me? and JavaScript.
Backtick, $,
Backtick.
curly.
Backtick. Let me copy and paste that the URL. I'm gonna delete where the name should go. It should be $, open and close curly brackets, and I'm gonna put drink in here. Now,
Do we have to say the lowercase?
it stays lowercase. Oh, this is a variable. I'm gonna assign this is only the variable. It's going to be replaced by this. It might have to be lowercase. Yes, you're absolutely right. You're talking now. We're thinking about like what if someone mistypes the input, right? We'll talk about it in a bit. I'm just trying to get it work. But good job, Kim. You're on the right track. Martini, and there you go, guys. Martini changed. The instructions are different. The name changed. But you are right. What if someone does Martini, right? Does that work? It did actually. It actually worked. Maybe if and why does it work, Roger? We didn't do anything. Well, let me tell you why. When people create APIs, they typically account for stuff like that. And you will know this whenever you create your own API throughout the immersive program, because you guys are going to create something similar to this. You just won't have the interface. The reason it works is because when people create APIs, they account for the fact that there's going to be people that might type in all caps. So they format their URLs. Whenever a request comes in, they will format it for you. Sometimes not always like that, but thank you for talking about that. That is a good point. But yeah, Martini, what's another drink? Who likes to drink? Give me a drink.
Long Island iced tea.
I don't know how the space is gonna work here. Tequila, sunrise. Let's do the Long Island iced tea. Oh, the spaces do work. It probably formats it for us too. Long Island iced tea. I wonder how if this one works. Is iced tea together? Error. Cannot read properties of no. Let's check out the actual database itself. How does that work? Long Island. I don't know if it's one word or 2 words. No drinks found. So see how we got an error? It's probably because it doesn't have it. Long Island. It does have it. Long Island tea, Long Island iced tea. How does it actually want for it to work though? Show me. I wonder if we do API. Search by name. It's not the most user-friendly API. I'm sure there's a way of doing it. Long Island iced tea. Let's go back to it. How do we add it? Long Island iced. There we go. Iced tea. Now, when it doesn't work, we can make stuff for that. Like, what if it doesn't work? We can actually add like, if else, like, if the request fails, just like you saw on the code, like catch error, you do console.log, and then it does the error for us. We can actually do something very similar to this. And we can do copy this. We should be able to do drink does not exist. If it catches the error. This should work, honestly. Long Island iced tea. It's spelled correctly first. That works. Let's spell it wrong. Boom. Does not exist. All right, so we're able to do that. Cool. That's how that's why they have the catch error. Do I have any questions? Did that help, Kim? Walking it through.
Yep, definitely.
Any questions, anybody? Any at all? Okay. We're gonna go ahead and move forward with today's lesson. That concludes the cocktails.html. More API student practice. You guys already do it. Make your app work with a drink Moscow Mule. Oh, we didn't do that. Notice it has space in it. It should be fine. We can move forward. All right. Next, I need you guys to download Postman. Right. You're gonna be using this during the immersive program. So go ahead, go on Google, and look for postman.com and download this application. While you guys do that, I'm gonna load up mine and sign in because I haven't used it in a while. But what Postman allows you to do is it allows you to test APIs, right? Without having to open up a file document like we did, add a fetch request and put in a URL manually to there, like without having to like do all that code to test if an API is working. Postman will allow you to do it through its interface. Let me stop sharing so I can open my Postman up real quick. Has anyone in here used Postman before?
I guess I have. I just don't know when I did. It was probably like a year or so ago.
Okay. I haven't opened it in a hot minute. Gotta log in. The reason I'm making you guys download it now because you're gonna need it anyways for the immersive program. And then you can use it to test your stuff out as well. It can be a little intimidating at first. Bear with me. Where is? Let's open up the dog API because it's more user friendly. I'm going to share. Okay. Your Postman should look something very similar to this, right? I was messing with Pokemon API before, so ignore this. Don't save. You're gonna open up a new tab on the top left, and you should have a URL bar, right? On the left side, you have the options to do different types of requests. Is everyone seeing my screen right now? The different options of requests is GET, which is what we have been doing up to this point. We're putting in GET requests to the different APIs. You can put post requests. You can do put requests. I have not really done patch before. I've used delete. And what this allows you to do is essentially what the word's saying. A GET request will put in a request to an API to grab information. Post request allows you to create information. Put request allows you to update information, and delete allows you to delete information. The only request that we were allowed to do pretty much on that API that we're working on is GET requests. You know, if we try putting a delete request into their database, it would not allow us to. Like we wouldn't be able to delete anything, right? But the reason for this tool is because when you guys start creating your own your backends, you're gonna have to use these tools to test out that your database is working, and it's an amazing tool for it. And I will show you how it works using the dog API. Right? It takes a endpoint for the URL, and we'll use the random one here. I'll just copy and paste it. You set it to the setting of what type of request you're gonna be doing. I'm gonna be doing a GET request, and then you copy and paste the endpoint, and then press send. This will do everything that we. Oh, I added something in here. There we go. I added extra stuff. Okay, press send. This will do everything that you just did on your code, right, in your JavaScript file, but without the code, right? It will test it out for you. You're essentially just pinging the API before you actually write the code to ensure that it's working. And we see it here at the very bottom in our body, we got the actual response from the API. This will ping real live websites for you, right? Cool. We see here it gave us the message and the status. Notice underneath the URL bar, we have a couple different tabs. We have parameters, authorization, headers, body. Not all of these are needed. You might use some of these once you guys start working with your own backend. But essentially what this allows you to do is it manipulates this URL for you. For example, if I had if I needed to authorize something, if I needed to have a key, right? So some web page you have to have tokens. When you log into Facebook, right? Here would be like an example. Let's say Facebook is using token authentication. I don't know if they do or not. But some websites use token authentication, right? Especially if they're not very secure. What happens is when you log in, they assign to you what's known as a token, which is essentially just like a permission, and it's like some random code of different numbers and letters that gets assigned to you. And that these tokens, what they tend to have are expiration dates. Typically, they only have like an hour long duration. These tokens are what your browser will use to allow you to stay logged in and have access to your profile. If you've ever been to a website where you got logged out after like an hour of like not doing anything and you got to log back in, it's more like in the old age, they tend to kick you out, right? You had to log right back in. It's probably because your token expired. You won't really use tokens too much. It's only mainly for like developing. There's significantly much better ways of authenticating and securing your website. It's not the most secure thing to use, especially if you're the way you're going to use it in the immersive program, but it's mainly for like development tools. But the point is, you're able to add headers on here if they're supposed to have authentication, and you'll learn more about that in the immersive program as you go through. I just wanted to ensure that I showed you the application and its ability of pinging APIs and testing stuff out. Right here, it's a random one. Like every single time I put in here, it's bringing me a random request, very similar to how the website did it, right? All right, so the Postman application allows you to test APIs very quickly without having to write out any type of code. So here, test an API with Postman. You guys are more than welcome to continue trying it out, messing with it, if you guys want. You don't necessarily have to, but you can. Why is my thing linking? Okay. All right. Next, the newish way to ping an API syntax. If you guys recall at the beginning of today's class, I mentioned there's two different ways of putting in an API request. The first one was the more outdated version, but this is the way that we now do things, right? We start off, instead of just right off the bat going with a fetch, we put this bad boy in a function. We start the function off with async, so it'll be async function, and then get fetch. Open and close curly brackets. Notice the first line, we create a variable called choice. This is not it's not unique. You don't have to create the variable called choice, but what this line of code is doing, it is grabbing the value of that input tag, right? So whatever input tag this code belongs to, where some user put in information in there, it's gonna grab the value and save it to the choice variable. Very similar to how we did it in our code, and then it joined the URL string with that choice variable, right? Pretty much the exact same thing we did the cocktail one with the martini, but they're doing it here. Once the URL is created, like, we actually have what we're searching for, then we create a variable called data, and we do await, and then we do the fetch. Notice that they put the entire URL within the fetch as a variable, right? So before we just did fetch right off the bat, now we put it in a function because we were making that function asynchronous, right? Once the fetch does its thing, like before, it sends in that request to the API. The API goes to the backend, it grabs the information and brings it back to you. It'll save it within data. What the await does, it keeps your browser from doing anything else until this information gets back. If you were using, for example, now it's gonna make more sense. Remember I told you guys, if you guys didn't have async in your script tag, it might not load some stuff. Well, in API, you guys are essentially going to be creating the exact same thing for your backend. You're going to create a database. This database is going to hold information for your website. For example, let's say your users. And your database is where you're going to store the information of the people that create their, their accounts on your application. Their username, their password, email, any information that might pertain to that user is going to be saved in your database. How are you going to get access to it? By doing a GET request, just like this, right? You guys will create the URLs for your backend, these endpoints. Let's say your website is supposed to put in the GET request whenever a user signs in. That GET request needs to be put into your backend so they can get access to their profile. This profile has all your information, your pictures. Think about Facebook, right? Your pictures, your videos, all your posts. If I put in this GET request, right, and I don't have it in an async manner with the await, what's going to happen is my browser will load, but there will be no posts. There will be no images. There might not be any name. Why? Well, because I don't have the information that's supposed to take the spot of those tags, right? Because we sent the GET request, but we never waited for the information to get back, right? And that's what the async and the await are doing. It's putting this request and it's halting your browser, or essentially it's waiting for everything to come in before it fully loads it for you. If not, then you have to manually press the refresh button to reload everything. And then finally you'll have access to the information, right? So that's what the await is doing. It saves it to the data variable, and then they format it into JSON. So you see await data.json, and then save the information into the Pokemon info. Finally, they console the log the Pokemon info. So they broke it off. It's actually more like 3 steps here, right? The first step is creating the URL. The second step was actually putting in the GET request. And the third step was formatting the data. Does this make sense to you guys? Notice that the button up here has the method getFetch. Right? So whenever this button is clicked, it's doing this. We're going to start off with this so you guys can work on it on the weekend. API student practice Pokemon HTML. Some of you guys look a little, around my age. So I think for the most part, you guys grew up with Pokemon. So let's check that out. If we go to our VS Code, open up our Pokemon folder, Pokemon HTML, right click open with live server, you're gonna get this, right? Which Pokemon? This is very similar to the cocktail one, right? So you should be able to kind of use today's video over the weekend and try to replicate this. You will have this nice little picture of the main gang of the Pokemon show, right? So these technically Pikachu isn't really a starter, but yeah. So you have this. Now your job is to write the code for this application so that on the button click, the H2 name element changes to the Pokemon search. The default image is replaced with a picture of the same Pokemon, and the type of Pokemon is listed in the H3 type element. If you have time, which you will, because you guys have this weekend to work on it, I have a checkbox next to the Get Pokemon button that says Shiny, and I will allow you to search for the shiny version of that Pokemon. Gary, I see you smiling. Yeah, little nerd. You're getting super excited. So, have fun with it, right? If this shiny box is checked, it should return the shiny picture of that Pokemon. Cool. Let's check out what it has so far. It should have something in the spec tool on the console, if I'm correct. It's probably already pinging the Pokemon API. It is not. Let's look at the JSON. What is the JSON? Not the JSON, the JavaScript. Okay. So we have the button. So I think it's working right now. It's it's asking for a choice. So let's check it out. Pikachu. Okay, Pokemon. Oh, I'm done. Pikachu. Okay, so I'm able to put in Pikachu, and we see right here on the console, it's printing out my JSON data. Notice this is a little bit different than the cocktail one. It's not uniformity like before, right? You're going to encounter data like this, where it's nested upon nested. It gave me an object with different types of key value pairs. The first key value pair has a list within it, and this list has objects within it, right? And then this object has like key value pairs, numbers, right? Arrays. It's a mixture of different stuff, guys, right? This will help you kind of practice looking through the different types of nesting within a JSON object, right? So yeah, do you guys have any questions?
So this is the same thing as the last activity we just did, right? With the cocktails.
Pretty much. It's pretty much
Okay.
the exact same thing. The only thing that's really changed is the added difficulty of adding the shiny part. Which isn't it's optional, but if you're a geek like me, you'll probably send it. So try it out. Let's actually look at that Pokemon API. If you guys want to check it out. You guys are actually going to use the Pokemon API in the immersive program. You're going to be creating like your own Pokemon team, which is pretty cool. So we're not going to do that during the foundations program because I don't want to take away from the actual course itself. But at least you guys will be familiar a little bit with the Pokemon API. Pokemon API. Poke API, there we go. So this is the Poke API. Very straightforward. You have it right off the bat. You have to try it now, and it shows you how you get a Pokemon by name. And we see the information that it returns to us. Right? Check out the docs. We have the information, berries, contest, counters, evolution games. No. Here you go. Check out the documentation. I guess nothing else here. I don't know. API version 2. My bad. I was using the wrong one. So here it shows you for different parts, right? So we have the we have berries, berry types. Right, you can also look at the berries you wanted to. Where's the Pokemon? Is it just that? Okay, I guess there's only this part here. Pokemon. Oh, Pokemon species. We have ability, battle armor, Pokemon limit. Why can't I see the rest of the documentation? That's upsetting. Okay, here we go. Yeah, we have it here. Pokemon. It shows you how to get the different types of Pokemon and their abilities. So, abilities, characteristics, right? You can do it by egg groups. So grab Pokemon by egg groups, by genders, growth rates, natures. You have the works, man. All right. The exact same thing as the cocktail one. I do believe. Yeah, we still have more. I'm gonna end it here, right? Because you guys will probably have your work cut out for you. Where is my Zoom? We're not gonna finish the rest of it today because it's still we have 2 other APIs to check out after the Pokemon one. But I want to give you guys the chance to actually take some time and work on it. So today is Friday. This completes the first week of Foundations of Programming. I hope you guys learn a lot. There's still a lot more. All right, you guys have 3 more weeks of this. Yeah, I'll be available throughout the weekend if you guys need anything. I might not always get back to you right off the bat, but I am here, so if you have any questions, do not hesitate to message me. Have fun with the Pokemon API. If you guys want to go ahead, sure. Right? But I would just wait for us. We're still gonna do it Monday. If not, I would just focus on the Poke API and then try to make it good. Have fun with the CSS, right? Maybe try different stuff out, or whatever. But if you guys have no questions for me, this concludes today's week. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll be here for the remainder of the time if anyone wants to have any questions or want to go over anything, or whatnot.